Hey, welcome back to Shadow Shorts. If we've never met before, my name is Jeff Echols. I am a senior advisor and the head of marketing for Shadow Partners. And every weekday, I bring to you a short conversation with an expert or thought leader in the realm of innovation for the built environment. And today, I'm joined by a friend of mine, it's Bob Habian. He is the founder and the CEO of Tect App. That's TECT App. And we were just talking before we went live about these things that we develop and the things that we venture. And so the question, Bob, is who are we venturing for?
That's a good one. When thank you for having me on. And For context, I'm an architect and former manufacturer, and I have the pleasure of leading a team that is focusing on the people in our industry and how to connect better with experts on demand. Um, and so, who are we venturing for? Right? I'm a entrepreneur, as you are, and as are many on this channel. Um, Are we doing it for ourselves? Of course. Are we doing it for our teams? Yes. Are we doing it for our investors and shareholders? Of course. But the audience that intrigues me more is the end users in the market, right? Owners,
Mm.
occupants, developers, who, if they knew what all of us were already doing, there can be increased traction and benefit to their projects right now. And so to me, there's an interesting area between everyone's current venture activity to, let's say, get to mainstream versus applying some of those innovations earlier on the execution side. And I've done a bit of that throughout my career, and there's a lot of interesting activity related to that.
Yeah.
When you take your innovations and you put them into developments, and you really start grinding in projects. Um, so for earlier stage companies, I think it's an interesting uh, challenge to think about. For some of the other more mature that are already doing that, I think it's just great to see. But the idea of who we're venturing for, um, I think involves a whole lot of people, and when we involve them sooner or later is a thing.
Yeah, and it's so for those of you that don't know the background and weren't privy to our conversation earlier, I did not tell Bob this, but when we were talking about this topic, the thing that it brought to my mind is that we have launched applications are open right now, the next cohort of the Shadow Partners Incubator. And it's really going to be focused on exactly what you're talking about, Bob. It's going to be focused on the customer, right? They're going to
Mm.
be startups, pre-seed startups. They're going to be mentors. There's going to be teaching and training, but it's going to be focused on um, on customer discovery and the end user, whether it's a product, a service, application, technology, whatever it is. And I think that's a I think that's a really great question because yeah, I like the way you said it, right? If the developers, the end users, whoever they were, if they knew what was going on, the benefit of making that connection could be really huge for their projects or their end game. Um, as you've gone through this process, what has it's obviously it's not a linear path. There's nothing linear about any of this. Um, what's that experience been like for you, and what's been most beneficial for you during that journey?
Yeah, I think most beneficial is to continue to be grounded in the practical realities of our industry.
Mm,
Okay, to have a consistent sense of, is what we're ideating and developing relevant?
yeah.
Does it have practical application in the day to day?
Mhm.
And the way I've described that over time is this reality that the pace of innovation is set by innovators who are innovating on existing innovation. Pretty fast pace. And when you consider the rate of adoption, by definition, it's slower. So
Mhm.
every day we have a growing gap between what we can do and what we do. And so I look at the practical constraints and realities of adoption of new behavior. And so often what we're seeing is it has everything to do with the human factors of change
Mm.
rather than what's the capability of our technologies and available tools. So we always have more ability to do more and better than we actually do. And that rate of change and rate of adoption, I don't believe is always front and center to the innovators. It's just a different context. So for me, what I've found very valuable is to continue to revisit that adoption question. I was having a conversation with an investor last week, and they have a client, a very large hotel, international hotel chain. And for example, we're discovering experts in every product category. So there are experts in toilets, let's say, right? They're really experts that's their life, that's their wisdom, and they really understand best practices. What's the process of that global hotel chain getting the benefit of that expert? Are we going to wait for our tools to be adopted by architects who then are going to argue the point to their project teams to then try to get acceptance into the project delivery on that next project? Is that the go-to-market? Or do you go right to that international client and connect them with the truth now? And say, these innovations exist. These should be best practices for your toilets, using a simple example. And they say, oh, thank you for availing us of those best practices. Because when I spoke with that same investor, he said, well, I just rely on my architects to bring all of that knowledge and wisdom and to make sure that we're getting the best of the best. You know what I'm saying? So being able to ground that with practical realities of, hey, this won't be adopted until it goes through this other more standard and fairly dysfunctional project delivery model. How about just connecting things earlier with the stakeholders that we're all attempting to serve, not just the venture folks, but our clients, architects and builders and others? Why not just leapfrog that a bit to the end users and empower them? So anyway, I've been in that space, keeping a healthy balance of both sides. And throughout my career, I've always taken innovation and applied it. So one of my experiences was on Wall Street in Manhattan. And I organized 300 international manufacturers to actually just put their best products into my event center. And by definition, at the end of that project, it was deemed the most advanced built space on the planet Earth. Was that because I was a great developer? No. It's simply because we accelerated, right, the placement of those innovations into a real project. And so I expect to see a lot more of that. And I think that increases actually the value of the work that entrepreneurs are doing today to be able to jumpstart, the leveraged benefit of our innovations.
Well, that's where that's where disruption comes from, right? That's that jumping of the shark, so to speak. That's where disruption in the industry comes from, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think I don't view it as much as a matter of disruption as I do accelerated adoption, right?
Yeah.
It can be a disruptive tool. So as a developer, if I adopt certain newer metrics in my pro forma and strategy, which are possible because of these innovations, I can disrupt the conventional way of developing. Absolutely. And I've done it, from land acquisition to cost of goods to time to market. There are tools that can be used that can be disruptive to my competitors as a developer, for example. But at scale, if a venture is really relying on a percentage of market share, and you can accelerate the time to that destination by empowering earlier adopters, then I think it's really just accelerating that rate of adoption. And there's mutual benefit. That's the beauty of it. It's not a one-sided strategy. And so I absolutely believe that ventures such as ours and others should identify adoption champions on that market side and seek to empower them as part of that journey. Because at the end of the day, if you're creating value together, that could almost be another form of investment or resources, right? So again, are we taking and only looking at investment dollars from investors to then develop a venture that then has market value? Or is there a different way to look at the market value that's able to be created as a means of potential financing of the venture itself? Whether a venture takes an equity position in a project or shares in the upside of that accelerated adoption, et cetera.
Yeah, I like this question a lot. Who are we venturing for? And there are a lot of different sides to this. Obviously, the other day, KP Reddy, who and who's the CEO of Shadow Ventures and Shadow Partners, he was on talking, and we were talking about VCs versus corporate VCs, which is a fascinating distinction, right?
Mm.
The pure financial versus the sort of the in-house investing, and it's a completely different dynamic, right? The answer to that question, who are we venturing for, is different, between those two entities. And one of the questions that gets asked, as KP put it, on the VC side, the pure VC versus the CVC, is, if you win, who loses? And I think there's certainly, that's a reality, right? In a fast-paced investment, high return, high risk, high reward sort of ecosystem there, which is necessary on the VC side. But it also, I think what you're talking about goes along with that. It's not necessarily who loses. Certainly, when we have disruption, and me, and my pro practice students hear this all the time. You mentioned an antiquated system. There's time, right? There's time for disruption. There's time for change. And I think in a lot of ways we're far past time on some of these timelines. We're far past the point where we need to change. But the beauty of that reality is that the way that you're approaching it, the way that you're talking about it, is that there's a benefit. I don't know if we call it triple bottom line. I mean, there's certainly that focus, but there's a benefit to hopefully to all the parties involved when you're taking the approach that you're talking about.
Yeah, I like to think in macro terms, and that's generally who I am. I'm a macro strategist in the building industry, and I've taken the time over the last 30 years to understand more of what I call the puzzle, rather than just being a puzzle piece as an architect, for example, which I am, but more of a puzzle strategist to understand the different parts. So at scale, there's massive capital inefficiency in our industry. There's a lot of supporting research on that. If we're a multi-trillion-dollar global industry with efficiency, that's a tremendous financial opportunity. And I think even for traditional VCs, you would have to know an awful lot about our industry to understand how to truly tap into that opportunity. So are we going to venture to the capacity of a VC's understanding of the market value in terms of, say, flipping that venture to another level? Or do they understand that the trillions of dollars that are there to be impacted as the real value? And that to me has been a constant, where I can see when a venture gets caught up in the short-term, narrower scope context, when in fact it could well have applied to a much bigger market sooner if had they changed the lens that they were looking through to see what is the real value here. There are a lot of examples of that we could get into, and it'd take far too much time for you short, but it's a real opportunity to integrate outcomes earlier. Yeah. And to focus on the market value of the applied technology and the impact that has at scale. And that's where I think, the notion loosely, and I'm talking off the cuff here,
Mhm.
the notion of a funding team plus the product team plus some market partners to go out and execute real estate development, for example, in a participatory way, rather than an arm's length, oh, that's a client that will one day use our technology. Well, no, let's go
Right.
accelerate, not necessarily disrupt again, but let's accelerate that adoption. And why wait till some future point when that developer is just, again, arm's length to the solution? Why not get integrated with the very stakeholders on the use side of it, the application side of it? An analogy that comes to mind briefly is that I deal with manufacturers and design professionals. Well, when we work together, we're still not the end of the it's the project that we're trying to serve, and it's actually the long-term use of that finished project. That's the actual context. Not how closely can an architect and manufacturer better do what we do. That's important. That is the key to what we do. But really, what's the outcome? So one of the things I do with our clients is, let me make some introductions to some real world people that would want to know who that expert is in that has a project type that could actually benefit from it today. And let's leapfrog the adoption process that would otherwise take it a much longer time to get there. So there's some things in there from what's the venture value? Who's the audience? And who are we venturing for? So
Yeah. That's one of the things that I love about what I do, what I get to do, what we do in the ecosystem that we play in. Shadow Partners and Shadow Ventures is very purpose driven, right? And making those connections, connecting people within the network, the strategic partners, and of course investors is a big part of that realm as well. But um, you're right when you're talking about the numbers. Um, that are impacted, and I don't have the statistics pulled up in front of me, but we talk about this. It pops up in our content all the time. It's something like $100 trillion is the impact of all built environment, right? When we're talking about whether it's material product manufacturers or it's design, it's construction, it's development, all the different pieces, the users and everybody else. And so this is a really important conversation. No matter where you're entering into that equation, has the potential of an enormous impact, one of the largest, if not the largest, impact on the planet when it comes to the size of an industry. So I love this conversation, and the unfortunate thing is this is called shadow shorts. As you mentioned, we could go down a lot of rabbit holes here.
and we're already wearing long shorts,
We
aren't
are.
we? This is a
We
longer
are.
pair of shorts than some.
It is. Ian Pollock from our team joked with me the other day. He said that wasn't short. That was a shadow medium. So we're maybe in the realm of a shadow medium at this point. But
Mhm.
I guess maybe the segue here, as as an attempt to wrap it up, unfortunately, because it's a great conversation. But um, if you're out there listening to this, watching this, you say, "Oh, I would love to get more into this conversation." Bob is going to be at Shadow Summit in October in Atlanta, October 24th to 26th. These are the types of conversations that we get deep in the weeds at. It's called a summit for a reason. It's a gathering of people. It's a gathering of great minds, great thinkers, subject matter experts, innovators for the built environment. And we've got two days plus an opening reception, basically, to get, like I said, get into the weeds on conversations like this, and make decisions and have an effect, an impact on things that are going to happen in the built environment. It's exactly what Bob is talking about, right? It's the connections, it's the decision making, it's the learning, it's the understanding, and it's our opportunity to affect decisions that are going to be made for the built environment. Again, whether that's materials, whether it's developments, whether it's climate, whether it's housing, whether it's jobs, etc. That's what Shadow Summit is all about. So let me throw that URL up on the screen real quickly. If you're interested, shadowsummit.com is the place to go find more information and a place to apply to get a ticket for Shadow Summit. Shadowsummit.com, bottom left-hand corner of your screen right now. And if you want to know more about what Bob does and Bob and his team do, go to tect.com, learn more about Tect App. Got a lot of respect for what they're doing over there and the idea of connecting the right people in the right places at the right time is the way I would sum it up, just sort of off the cuff. But Bob, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your thoughts and your insights on this idea of who do we venture for. It's a fascinating conversation. We'll have to pick it up again later.
Look forward to that. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for doing this today. And for you out there that are watching or listening, we appreciate you. I'll be back tomorrow with another Shadow Short. I'll bring you another expert, another thought leader in the realm of innovation for the built environment. Until then, have a great day. Thanks, everybody.